Okay, we are going to dive deeper into the topic of biodesign with our next speaker. This is someone who really is something of a thought leader. She's very much at the forefront of biodesign. And her talk is part of a series of edu talks, which are related. You can see the logo up there, co-funded by the European Union, and related to the Nxt Gen Design project, which is an initiative of what design can do, a 3-year program built up of competitions and workshops aimed at European designers, especially young designers, to try and encourage them to do tangible work that contributes to the European Green Deal. Okay, so this is part of that series of talks. So wherever you see that logo, you can find those talks online as well. Okay, back to our speaker. She is the CEO of Faber Futures and the co-founder of New Phenomena of Life. And it took quite a few years to book her, but she is here with us in the room. Please give a big round of applause to, there you are, Natsai Chieza. Lovely. Welcome, Natsai. We've got a couple of stools to sit on so we can get nice and comfy. Okay, you go over there. Lovely. Perhaps we can start with just a clarification for anyone who isn't already aware. What is biodesign? How does it differ from regular design?
Big questions. Is this on?
I don't think it is yet. Is the mic on? If not, we'll grab one from over there. Try talking again.
Hello, hello.
Yes, we're good to go.
Biodesign. It's a contested definition space, and I see that William Myers is in the room. He wrote a book about it, so you should probably ask him. But I'll try my best, William, and then you can chime in. Biodesign, I think, in really simple terms, is the design of, with, and from living systems. And I think the way to think about it is that this is happening on a spectrum. So if we think about the living bridges that are made when fig trees are trained to grow into the shape that we need them to be able to navigate rainforests in India, that's a pretty good example of a human and nature partnership to build infrastructure. If you want to go a little bit further along that polarity, if you like, we have new engineering technologies by way of synthetic biology that allow us to design living systems for them to have particular capabilities that would otherwise not be the case. Or to emphasize traits that an organism might already have. And we might want to do this, or I should say we already do this for pharmaceuticals, for example. But now we have the toolkit to be able to generate new materials that, if we design it well, and with a systemic approach, could help us divest from fossil fuels, because of course the implications of decarbonizing is where are all of our materials going to come from?
Are massive, yeah. And I understand that 80% of the CO2 footprint of every product comes from the design process, so there's a lot of room to win. But you gave a kind of perfect bridge to my next question, which is about Faber Futures, what you do with your agency. You mentioned synthetic biology.
Yes, so Faber Futures was founded in 2018. After about 7 years of myself working as an independent researcher in what was at the time a nascent field of biodesign. And I think what was really interesting about that time is that you were starting to see an ecosystem of designers, creatives, scientists, engineers coming together to ask questions about what happens if we all work together. And what happens when all of those people share knowledge is that novel systems can emerge as a result. And so by the time sort of 2018 hits, I'd spent 5 months moonlighting in a biotech lab in Boston, really trying to understand from a business perspective, what are the implications of design being at the table, not as marketing, not as lipstick on a pig right at the end, but actually in the lab, working with engineers to think about how we might even develop the infrastructure to design living systems with the capabilities of design in mind. And so Faber Futures was really established to professionalize the design industry within the biotech technology stack. But from our perspective at Faber Futures, it's really essential that we have a systemic view about how we're going to proliferate these technologies. And so we work with biotech companies, we work with cultural institutions who want to be able to share this complexity with a public that can have buy-in and a stake into what our biological futures look like. But we also work with policymakers who are thinking about, okay, it's one thing to have a technology. How do you deploy it? And how do you deploy it in communities? How do you deploy it in communities that are at the cusp of a climate transition? So our work is extremely collaborative and quite difficult that way to define.
Yeah, before we go a bit more into your work though, is that advice here for people, that, because you said you spent 5 months, you invested 5 months of your time away from the design table, your design agency, actually working side to side with engineers, with scientists. So do you need to invest that personally to get that knowledge, or can you just kind of cut corners and work with partners who do that well and just describe what you want?
I think that, your earlier question was, how is this different from regular design? And I think it's just design. It's all just design. We're operating at different scales, maybe. We're operating with different syntaxes, languages, tools. And because of that, you can't do it by half measure. You do have to have a total immersion. But I think what's super exciting about biodesign and why it gets me up every day in the morning is that it's not just the technological capabilities that we're exploring. We're understanding by doing the work that we are becoming more biological beings. It is a gateway to a cultural revolution, and I mean that in all seriousness, because what it forces you to confront is that we have fossil fuel-based ideology about how we're going to scale some of these industries, which is completely the antithesis to how nature wants to scale. And nature scales. Anyone who tells you or asks, is this scalable, hasn't actually looked at the Amazon rainforest. That is a model for how nature scales, and it does it because it can evolve into various niches. So what I think we are interested in is, how deep can you go to actually get to the systemic levers for change that allow us to do really bold things, not just in the context of making new materials, but in the psychological revolution we need to steward a habitable planet.
And do you feel, actually, another aside, I'm sorry, I want a list of questions, but do you feel, on like a deep philosophical level, do you feel like closer to nature as a result of doing all this work?
I might segue into here and say, yes. So this is a microbe that started my journey into this field. It's a microbe called Streptomyces silicola. Silicola means sky blue in Latin. It produces a blue pigment. In industry, we use it to make pharmaceuticals, antibiotics. But when I was introduced to this organism, I thought, I wonder if that microbe can dye textiles, which started me on this journey. And it's a fascinating organism because you come with all of the logic around the petroleum model of industrialization when you start working with the system. So I spent about a year trying to extract the pigment so that I could use it as a drop-in replacement into things we already do. In other words, hey, nothing changes, just the ingredient, and how wrong I was, because it didn't work and it wasn't very efficacious. But the minute we started growing it directly onto textiles, suddenly we had a dye technology that did not require any mordants, any fixing chemicals to make sure that the dye stays on the textile. And it was extremely water efficient. The only way we were able to make that leap was to learn from nature. It's a very humbling process. And it's that sort of, you become the organism, it becomes you. Because your cycles are tied together in such a profound way that it's very difficult to just deal with this organism in the context of industrial chemicals. Yeah.
And did you always have the idea that you would grow it on the textile itself, or you experimented with other things beforehand and then?
Exactly. We spent a long time experimenting, and with my partner at UCL, who, back in the day, there was no context to do this work. But here in the Netherlands, you have Blue City Lab, for example, where you can actually come and do this in a formal capacity. But I had a very wonderful old school scientist who was like, yeah, just come hang out and you can use my keycard and let's see what happens. But it was because of that openness that we were able to stumble upon something that, many years down the line, we can say, hey, here's how you make a jacket with it, and here's how you scale that so that you have many jackets. And it's a very big leap to have that Petri dish sample into actually developing pattern cutting that's commensurate with what's happening in the lab so that you have the most efficient system for actually deploying these textiles.
Super exciting to see that just happen like that. Your work also caught the attention of the World Economic Forum, and they invited you to be part of the Global Future Council on Synthetic Biology. Can you tell us a little bit about how your design work helps the council?
Sure. So for context, the Global Futures Council on Synthetic Biology is one of many councils at the forum that specifically looks at key technologies or areas of research, domains of expertise that the forum wants to build international collaboration and coordination around implementing. And so synthetic biology is one. AI, of course, will be another. I'm really shocked still that one for design does not exist. So maybe you guys should champion hard for that.
What doesn't exist, I'm sorry?
A Global Futures Council on Design.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, the thing that we're talking about is design is so integral to making all of the above work, and yet WEF isn't necessarily representing it. So I was really honored to be asked to bring that design hat into the room to say, if we're thinking about synthetic biology at scale, deployment in a way that is accounting for the social as well as the environmental, what do we need to know today? And so Faber Futures was commissioned by WEF to design stakeholder engagement, initially to validate its assumptions, and I think we pushed back on that to say, you don't do stakeholder engagement to validate your assumptions, you do it to find out what's actually happening in the wild. And the way in which you design that process is going to reveal certain stories, privilege others, and so we have to be very sensitive to how it is that you actually design stakeholder engagement. And you'll know that.
And when you say stakeholders, you mean regular people?
So no, typically stakeholders at WEF mean who are the money people, who are the legal people, who are the government leaders. Those are WEF stakeholders, who are the business CEOs. And then we thought, that's really nice, that's who you always talk to. But we know that in the context of our relationship with the living world, everybody is a stakeholder. And so actually we don't want to have a conversation about synthetic biology because most people won't know how to engage in that in an equal footing. So instead we invited people to bring an artifact to dialogues that we designed, and an artifact that best describes their relationship with the living world, which means anyone can engage with what the brief for synthetic biology is.
And these are some examples of the objects that they brought in.
Exactly. We ran a few prototype forums. The first was actually in Eindhoven at MU as part of Dutch Design Week. And we were able to convene a local set of stakeholders to talk about a Dutch response, if you like, to relationships with the living world. So we had scientists, we had designers, we had pedagogues. It was a very rich mix of intelligences, all advocating for how we want to live in the future. And I think it's so important because then it starts to clarify what the stakes are around these technologies.
Can you give us an example? If we go back to the previous slide,
Sure.
Can you take an object and give us an example of the relationship you're describing?
I think one of the most exciting ones, there's so many to choose from, but the incubator right at the top there, IZ18, was an artifact donated by Iona Katz, and her vision of synthetic biology is one where we actually care for the organisms. So the incubator is where the organism is going to grow at a particular temperature so that you can nurture it, so that you can get what you want out of it. And you can decide how transactional that interaction between the human and the non-human is going to be. And what she was saying in her dialogue, part of her dialogue was, what if we could actually learn from the nurture factor of this object that could teach us and guide us into what kinds of stewards we need to be for the future, where we see the value of these technologies not being rooted only in yield and revenue, but actually this dual symbiosis that we're seeing with anyone who's done anything in the lab.
It's beautiful, but it requires such a mindset shift, because traditionally we see these organisms as in service for us. So, but I'd love to know, because this is your Bio Stories project, right?
Yes.
How has that influenced your own current projects and collaborations?
So, part of the remit at WEF was to generate a report. Our design challenge was to design a PDF. It's the most beautiful PDF you've ever seen. I encourage you to go and download it now. Hours were spent typesetting that document.
You nearly said that bloody document.
Oh no, it's one of my, I think it's one of the best PDFs ever designed in the world. So, but in it you will find this, kind of summary of those conversations. We worked with an anthropologist who actually analyzed all of the dialogues that we had. At the time using grounded theory methods, which probably AI can do for free and very fast now, which is really terrifying. But with her mind and with all of the bias checks that we built into the process, we were able to have some really clear, here's how you should think about this next to WEF, right? And one of the most interesting, I won't go into all of them, of course, but on future states, I am really interested in the policies, laws, and regulations that encourage place-based innovation. And increasingly, our work is leaning into that. QR code, you can download it. But I might signal to a project that we recently launched last September Design Festival, London Design Festival, called Normal Phenomena of Life. Normal, not new. Everyone says new, it's normal. It's not you, it's us. But Normal Phenomena of Life is exploring exactly that. How do we build local biotechnological solutions that speak to a local culture, that use local supply chain and develop those local supply chains, and that make biology kind of irresistible? And so we launched, in partnership with a company called Ginkgo Bioworks, we launched Normal Phenomena of Life as a brand that exists to bring biotech-enabled products to market with a very clear remit on what our value drivers are and how we actually want to shape the market for the bioeconomy on a lot of the learnings I think we took from BioStories, because believe you me, nobody in industry gives a damn about how to do this well. And so for us, it's always been really important to prototype what we mean, the notion of show, don't tell. We could tell people, hey, read BioStories and then do something about it. No, you've got to build the thing that starts to demonstrate and enact those values. And so what was really exciting about the project when we started is that there were no products to speak of that actually met some of these expectations that we were wanting to uncover. And so we knew that part of our remit was to bring products to market. And I'll give 3 examples.
I think we may only have time for one. Just give us your favorite.
Oh man, I already talked about the jacket, but one that I'm really excited about is a lamp that we're launching with bioconcrete based materials, bacteria that calcifies aggregate into materials stronger than concrete. And what we have demonstrated with this body of work is that it's not going to be enough to have biomaterials. We actually need to design products that are also circular. So this lamp is designed, and all of its components and material specs are designed for complete disassembly, which means that you can keep those precious, precious materials that we're growing in circulation.
Superb. Such a teaser, but you're hanging around for the whole day, right?
I'm around.
Fantastic. Please give it up for Natsai Chieza.